I'm Rod Ubrine. I'm a postdoctorate research fellow at the Centre for Applied Water Science at the University of Canberra. My research interests around water quality and contamination of our waterways. And my recent research is focused on investigating algal blooms in Lake Tuggeranong. Okay, so we're trying to investigate the algal blooms, what's causing them, the major drivers of the algal blooms. To this we need to understand what's there and what's coming into the system that causes the algal blooms. To do this, we're sampling in the lake regularly on a weekly basis over summer to understand what's there, what's happening in the lake, but we're also sampling in the catchments on a weekly basis to understand that. On top of this, when rainfall occurs, it's really important because there's a lot of movement through the catchment at this time. So when the rainfall happens, we don our raincoats, head out into the catchments, get nice and drenched, but get some nice samples that help us understand what's happening in the catchments and the movement of water and particulate through the catchment. Usually there's about 8 people working on the research, ranging from people who sample the lake, sample the catchments, analyse the samples in the lab, prepare the samples in the lab and manage the project. I suppose the key goal is to try and understand how we can limit algal blooms in Lake Tuggeranong. To do this, we need to understand where, when, how the blooms form, why the blooms form. So we can use that information to design solutions to minimise the algal blooms. No, absolutely not. In a recent publication worldwide, there's been 1,169 incidents of algal blooms reported since 2000 in 869 different freshwater systems in 66 different countries. So it's a worldwide phenomenon. In Australia, they're also present in urban areas, Murray-Darling system, so a very common occurrence. Absolutely, algal blooms are a natural phenomenon, and in Australia, the first recorded algal bloom was in 1878 in Lake Alexandrina in South Australia. And here there was death of cattle, sheep and pigs, but there's also historical records of the indigenous people being aware of algal blooms and toxic water prior to European settlement. So we know they've been around naturally for a long time. But having said they're not natural, we do a lot of modifications to our waterways and the way water moves through our environment. So while algal blooms are a natural phenomenon, I would say not all algal blooms that occur are a natural occurrence, because the way humans use our water system affects the way those algal blooms occur and enhances them sometimes. Stopping the algal blooms. Yeah, that's a really open-ended question. When I think of stopping the algal blooms, the only way we can fully stop the algal blooms is to stop the nutrients that feed the algal blooms. Currently in Lake Tuggeranong, we've got lots of nutrients coming into the lake from external sources. And these are the stormwater drains and creeks that feed into the lake. And they're the major problem. So we need to stop these. These will involve community actions to limit contamination and water movement through these catchments. But it's more than that, I think. I think it's going to take further infrastructure to stop the nutrients coming into the lake in these catchments. So that's a long-term investment. On top of that, over the 40 years Lake Tuggeranong has been established, there's been a build-up of nutrients within a sediment layer in the lake, and these can be released. So even when we can control the external nutrients coming into the lake, there's reported up to 20 years time lapses of release of internal nutrients. So it's potentially, how long's a piece of string?